Hello and welcome to Justice. I'm Melissa Francis, filling in today for Judge Jeanine Pirro. Thanks for being with us. A busy hour ahead, but we begin with Donald Trump, the GOP presidential nominee, making his case directly to African-American voters on Saturday, appearing at a church in Detroit. Trump spoke to the congregation and promised to bring jobs back to minority communities and to reverse Democratic policies that he says have failed African-Americans.
I'm here today to learn, so that we can together remedy injustice in any form, and so that we can also remedy economics, so that the African-American community can benefit economically. Nothing is more sad than when we sideline young black men with unfulfilled potential, tremendous potential. I met some people this morning that were incredible people, and they're looking for jobs. These are incredible people, young people. Our whole country loses out when we're unable to harness the brilliance and the energy of these folks. We're one nation, and when anyone hurts, we all hurt together, and that's so true. So true.
The event was not without protests. Several groups gathered outside the church chanting against Trump. Few clashed with police even. After the event, Trump and former GOP presidential candidate Ben Carson toured Carson's old neighborhood in Detroit and visited his childhood home. So the question is, will Donald Trump's message resonate with black voters, a community with which he is far behind Hillary Clinton in the polls? Donald Trump's senior advisor, Tanner Gertz, joins me now. How did he do today? What do you think he accomplished?
I think he did fantastic today. The feedback that I've already received was people love to see that Donald Trump, the Donald Trump that I've known for over a decade. He is a man who does listen to people. He heard the hopes and the dreams and the issues that were affecting African Americans, and he went into that community and he was open-minded and just poured his heart and soul out and just said, I'm here to help.
Okay.
I will create jobs for you.
It is a tough sell. I mean, he is way behind with African American voters, and some say, why do this as opposed to going to Florida, going to a swing state, courting another group of voters where he might have a better chance?
Well, that's a great question, and the answer is because Mr. Trump cares about all Americans, not just African Americans, but all Americans. And he heard that they were desperately looking for help. He heard the hopes of them, and he said, let me go in. I might be misunderstood. And
right.
He is misunderstood with the protesters that were out front. So Mr. Trump went in, he shared his heart and soul. He shared that his message was, we are all brothers and sisters with one God, regardless of our colors. And I think it was a home run, and I thought it was perfect. And that's the Donald Trump that I know, the man that really loves people.
Okay, so I understand, his message that within the inner city, if you look at the plight of people who have been abandoned there for a long time, struggling, trying to get ahead, that the policies of Democrats have failed them. But what specifically does he want to do differently?
He wants to create jobs.
How?
At the end of the by having a better economy, by keeping people that are coming into our country illegally, keeping them out of our country, so that all these African-American young men that he's talking about who don't have jobs, who are desperate and don't have a way of putting food on the table, who have given up, that he said were on the streets when they rolled in. He was seeing people just sitting on the streets, desperate, despair, with no hope or any
what's an example of a job
that
an illegal immigrant is doing in Detroit, that somebody who you say who's sitting on the side of the street when Donald Trump rolls into town, what's a job that they would want to do that an illegal immigrant is doing right now in that city?
Well, maybe it could be a tile man. I don't know. I haven't asked Mr. Trump this, but I know in my state, there are people that are here that are doing jobs that a lot of college kids would do: electricians, carpentry. There's a long list of various different jobs, and Mr. Trump realizes the reason why we're so divided is because Hillary and the Obama economy has failed us, not just African Americans, but Americans. And with a bad economy, meaning no jobs, people get desperate and do desperate things: sell drugs, become criminals, hurt one another. And Mr. Trump is he's a job creator. I know this firsthand. He employs tens of thousands of people. He will create jobs jobs for all cities, but he realizes Detroit right now is a city that is on the radar that is in desperate need.
People say that he's there and they accuse him of pandering, that he got the questions in advance and he worked on the answers and that it was very much staged for the cameras as opposed to being sincere. How do you respond to that?
Let me tell you what, Mr. Trump is very sincere. He is not pandering. He realizes that we're all Americans. He wants every American voter. He's saying, look at what Hillary and Obama have given you. Nothing. We are now at a deficit. The poverty level is over 26%. The unemployment rate is double that. That is thanks to President Obama. And if Hillary Clinton is elected, that's what you all have to get again. That's what you will get again. He's the most sincere man that I know. Mr. Trump is in there. I mean, going into an unknown territory is very dangerous. I think it shows leadership. I think it shows a strong leader who listens and who learns. And that's what I want in my next president.
What is the response from the campaign today to all that we learned about Hillary Clinton's interview with the FBI yesterday?
Excuse me?
What is the response from the campaign to all that we learned from Hillary Clinton's interview with the FBI yesterday? All those details were released, showing that she didn't recall her training, that she didn't know what the C meant on the various emails. Is there a response from the campaign to that today?
Absolutely. That is, Hillary Clinton is disqualified from becoming, for running for presidency. She should be 100% disqualified, and the American people are smart. That's why her numbers are going down and Mr. Trump's numbers are going up. People realize exactly what they're going to get with her, and that is a person who lied and was extremely careless with all of our security.
Tanya Gortz, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. My next guest is Martin Luther King Jr.'s niece and a director of civil rights for Priests for Life. She's also a Fox News contributor. Alveda King joins me now. Alveda, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. This is
Melissa, thank you. Hello. Hi.
Hello, good to see you. This is a tough message that Donald Trump is bringing, and it's one that I've heard echoed from Ben Carson as well. The idea that Democratic policies, they may be well-intentioned, but they have done more to hobble the community rather than to lift it up. Do you agree with that, or what do you think?
These are the moments I have longed for throughout this campaign, to see the platforms in front of us and to have a chance to examine those and to find out what those solutions are. Now, the platform of the Democrats, headed up with Mrs. Hillary Clinton, is let's give you more abortions, more birth control, pass out more birth control and all of this, and that's lock everybody up who's committing crimes, and that's going to make America better. And so that platform is just not full of hope. The platform that Mr. Trump is leading says, let's give more jobs, let's do better with education, let's get the jobs back to Americans first. And he's not pushing the immigrants out who are legal, but to open up more jobs and opportunities. I was listening to the question, what does that really look like?
Yeah.
Well, young African Americans, of course, can get back into some trades like the electricity and all of those electricians and plumbers and all of that. Many of them had to be forced out of school, dropped out of school, are not trained, so they really need some good education. And then they can take part of their earnings and invest those earnings and become entrepreneurs. What better example of an opportunity for entrepreneurship than to have a president who has succeeded and done that. One thing about Mr. Trump, 70-year-old billionaire in the golden years of his life, wants to help all Americans. He surrounds himself with leaders like Dr. Ben Carson. There are many leaders that he surrounds himself with who know how to succeed in America, and they actually have put aside their own retirement and vacation to help America. Oh, my God. I mean, this is a golden moment.
But it can be hard to hear the message from him specifically. I mean, people accuse him of pandering. The last time he went out and he made a speech, he was trying to make the point about school choice and saying that Hillary Clinton is against school choice, and why should inner city kids not have a choice when wealthy, affluent white kids have a choice? And that was, no matter what he said, it was taken out of context, and he made the comment about that Hillary Clinton's a bigot for not wanting that choice for inner city kids, and that's what people focus on. So it's hard for him to deliver the message. What advice would you give him so that he's better heard?
isn't there a wonderful saying, don't shoot the messenger, listen to the message? And I believe that, as he explains, when I say school choice, I just mean that every American simply needs a good education so that they can use their minds in their hands to make America better, so that they can invest in America. And right now, school choice is an excellent platform for that, because we all know that when you bring in a program like school choice, it makes the public schools get better because they have to compete with the other alternatives. Competition he gets. He knows competition, and he says we're going to let the best educators compete and come to the table and give America's children better education. And so when he puts it in that language, America will definitely get that.
Do you think it's realistic to think that he would get more minority votes at this point? I mean, he has been painted as racist by a lot of the electorate, whether that is accurate or not. That message has been sent through the mainstream media. And at this point, it seems like no matter what his intentions are, it is difficult to win that vote back.
Melissa, there are several polls out there, and I can give you some real case studies of my cell phone, my Twitter, my Facebook, things ringing, and people are now saying, I need to take another look at Donald Trump. I said, well, forget the personality, look at the platform. African Americans can think, reason, like all Americans can. And when people begin to look at that platform and understand, and you know, he's really putting his money and his heart where his mouth is. He's going into these neighborhoods. He's asking, how many times have we ever heard a presidential candidate go and say, African Americans, will you vote for me? The Democrats take it for granted. The Republicans previously have ignored that. But here's a man that says, I want your vote. I care about you. Let me help. Now, I'm not endorsing any candidates. I pray. I look at the platforms. I do vote pro-life. So that's just where we are. So I believe that he's got my attention. I believe he's going to have the attention of America, not just African Americans.
So do you think he has to do more of this? Would you send him into other cities? I mean, where do you think he should go next?
I believe that he will continue to visit all of the communities of America. And that's going to be every ethnic group, no colorblind. He's going to take off those glasses and see clearly what America needs and begin to answer, listen to America and answer. And we're going to embrace the ethnicity of all America. This is a melting pot. It's time for the stew to smell good, and I believe Mr. Trump can help.
Okay, Alveda King, always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate it.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Trump's push for African-American voters comes on the heels of another interesting day for Hillary Clinton. The FBI released a report relating to her July interview with the Bureau about her private email server and all of those classified emails. Joining me now, former Hillary Clinton advisor to her 2006 campaign, Democratic strategist Richard Goodstein. Richard, thanks for coming back this week. Let me ask you, what did you think of the information that came out yesterday? Specifically, I mean, some of the things that caught my attention, the idea that she didn't know what the C for classified men. I think all of us know what that means, and we've never been trained or held government office.
Yeah. You know, I think when Hillary Clinton, let's think back, 8 years is not ancient history. When she became Secretary of State, the world was going to hell in a handbasket. The economy was tanking. The U.S. was in its reputation around the world.
This was just a month or two ago when she was sitting down for that interview with James Comey. She didn't know what that C meant.
Okay.
She said she thought it was A, B, C.
Right.
Like bullet points.
I understand. You know what? It's funny. Donald Trump asked in a debate about the nuclear triad, didn't know what that was. He insisted on TV he didn't know who David Duke or white supremacists were.
I don't think that's the subject we're doing right now. We're trying to talk about, is it reasonable that she's supposed to be, and hang on one second, is it reasonable that she's supposed to be the Secretary of State and in charge of all this classified information, and all of us out there who read the newspaper know what the C means, and she doesn't? That's either gross incompetence or she's not telling the truth. It's just astonishing.
Right. So, you know, again, I just have to use this as a frame of reference. Her Republican antagonist had her for 11 and a half hours in that Benghazi committee. If they thought there was an Achilles heel there, they would have borne in on it, Melissa.
We got to stick to this email thing. This is really what this topic is about.
Well, that was about emails, too.
So you don't think anything about the fact that she doesn't know what the C meant? How about this idea that they downloaded emails to a laptop and stuck it in the mail, and it got lost in the mail. That was their excuse as to what happened to many of the emails that have now disappeared and can't be retraced. I mean, to me, that's either really gross incompetence or they're lying.
Right. So again, all this talk about the emails that she did not disclose because they were personal, right? We don't know. I've read that thing cover to cover that the FBI released yesterday. And yes, there were people who, in retrospect, didn't do everything that I think they probably wish they had done to preserve things and so forth. But as far as those documents were concerned that were personal, and I think that's what we're referring to, think back to
what we're talking about is, would you ever stick a laptop in an envelope and hand it to the postman? I mean, in what world would anyone ever do that, Richard? That is the most bizarre story. I mean, I feel like that's one of my kids coming to me and telling me what happened to their laptop. I mean, it's ridiculous. No one would do that. And if they did, there's really something wrong with their brain.
Right. So again, so how is that imputed to Hillary Clinton's competence to be president of the United States, what somebody on her staff did who's a tech guy, right? Look, the fact of the matter is, as I've heard often said on this air, there's a binary choice. Hillary Clinton may not be the most tech-savvy person in the world. Republican opponents of Donald Trump, as we know, called him a racist, bigot, xenophobe, misogynist, and a con artist. That's the choice. And I agree. If they want somebody to run the technology for the country, my guess is that Hillary Clinton will pick.
Does it concern you that she can't remember her security training, or if she had it, because she said she fell and she hit her head? I mean, are you worried she has brain damage?
That's actually a mischaracterization. No. Again, we just saw her for 11 and a half hours. Donald Trump bellyached
that was her
about
answer,
a debate.
She said she can't remember.
Donald Trump bellyached about a debate for more than 2 hours when he was only going to talk for 15 minutes. She was on the hot seat for 11 and a half hours. Did she look like somebody who couldn't remember things?
So then that would make me think that she's lying then. Because if I agree with you. I don't think it's true that she can't remember. So I agree with you. I think that means she's lying then.
After she had her concussion, there were briefings that either she couldn't remember or she didn't receive. You know who also didn't have briefings when he was hospitalized? Ronald Reagan. So yeah, when you're hospitalized and there's something wrong with you, you miss briefings. Okay. But the fact of the matter is, again, they've seen her on the world stage. They've seen her in this hearing. We've seen her operate. If the Trump campaign wants to go after her for being somehow addled, that is a debate Hillary Clinton would gladly have.
Let me ask you about the most recent polls, which I think you'll agree by all accounts are closing. Why do you think that's happening? Do you think it's this kind of conversation about the emails and all that is weighing on her? Her numbers have gone down. Do you think that it's a steadier message from Donald Trump? I mean, how would you explain the tightening in all of the polls?
Yeah. Well, look, the fact of the matter is, if you look at Real Clear Politics, that's what Chris Wallace always refers to, her lead's about 4 points. Right. Before both conventions, it was smaller than that. So the fact of the matter is, after all the dust is settled, people are going up and down and bumps and receding to the norm. She's actually got a bigger margin today than she did before both conventions. So, you could read
it's been shrinking since the end of the conventions. She was way ahead, and now it's closing up. But you're not concerned, I understand. Richard, always a pleasure. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Melissa.
Appreciate your time.
Sure.
All right, so he closed the gap, but can he move ahead? GOP pollster Lee Carter is next to tell us how Donald Trump was able to tighten things up in the polls this week and what he needs to do to push those still undecided voters over the fence. And then later, the NFL season starting under a cloud of controversy. Should police boycott the San Francisco 49ers over Colin Kaepernick? We're going to talk about this with author and Fox News contributor Kevin Jackson. Stay with us as justice rolls on. Welcome back to Justice. New Fox polls this week show a tightening of the presidential race. Hillary Clinton's lead is down to only 6 points in a head-to-head race with Donald Trump, but in a four-way, Hillary's lead drops to just 2, which is a virtual tie if you factor in other factors there. Here with all of the details and what the candidates need to do in the final stretch of the race, political pollster Lee Carter. Lee, thanks so much for joining us.
Great to be here.
What do you think about the fact that when you put the other candidates in there, and it's not just the head-to-head, that they end up taking from Hillary Clinton? Does that surprise you?
It's very surprising to me, especially because Gary Johnson is a libertarian. He's getting 9% of the votes. It's pulling away from Hillary Clinton, and you wouldn't expect that to happen. You would expect a libertarian to be pulling from Donald Trump, and that's just not the case. And we're looking now at a race between them as in a statistical dead heat. And so it's clear to me that the strategy that Trump's been employing over the last 2 weeks is really, really working. He's moving ahead. He's keeping his base solid, and he's even getting more. So,
what do you make of that? Because it's hard for me to trust the fact that the Libertarian candidate is pulling from Hillary Clinton. In other pollsters, before we had this most recent one, most people thought that it would be pretty equal from both sides to have the other candidates in there.
Yeah, I would have thought that it would have pulled equally on both sides as well. So this poll is surprising to me, although we are seeing that when you talk to a lot of the Bernie Sanders supporters, they like Gary Johnson's message. They like it's a very anti-government message. It's a very anti-establishment message. And I think that is pulling some of those folks that would have been going for Bernie Sanders. Yeah. And you would have expected them to be going to Hillary Clinton. But it does make sense if you really do think about it in some ways. But it is surprising.
The other part of the poll that I thought was interesting was, are both Clinton and Trump terrible candidates? 44% of respondents said yes, that they hate them both. That's unusual, right?
It is a very unusual number. But you know what? I was surprised it wasn't higher, because you have conversations out there, everybody's saying, like, this is the worst. I don't like either one of them. But 44%, that's not as bad as I expected, although it certainly is a lot. It is a lot worse than we've seen in the past. Absolutely.
What do you expect people who respond that way to do? I mean, do they hold their nose and pick a candidate? Do they stay home? When you see negatives like that so high, what do people do?
You know, what we've seen traditionally is people don't vote against someone. They usually go to vote for someone. So I think what we're going to see is a lot of people are going to stay home. That said, we're in a very, very different election cycle that I've ever seen before. The level of intensity of feelings is so high. The fear, I mean, Hillary Clinton's calling Donald Trump dangerous. People believe that Donald Trump is dangerous, and that might drive people to vote, not for Hillary Clinton, but against that idea that something else is dangerous. But likewise, there's a lot of people who say Hillary Clinton, I can't trust her, she's crooked. All of the information that's coming out now about the emails and the more in-depth things is really causing people to say, I'm not sure that I can trust her to be president and not do, act in our best interest. So I think we might see more people go to the polls than we expect, because traditionally we do see that people don't go and vote against someone. So I think we're going to have a different cycle this year.
Donald Trump sitting at 39% in this poll. The folks on Hillary Clinton's side say that he's got a ceiling and he's sitting right at it, and that he may have done better, and his numbers have gone up in the past week or two as we've seen him deliver a steadier message and stay on prompter and, not have some of the gaffes that he's had in the past, but they don't believe he can break higher than that. Have you seen evidence that he could go higher than that, or do you believe that he's hit a ceiling?
I don't believe he's hit a ceiling. I do think that he can go higher. I think we saw him when he was higher right after the convention. I mean, look, we still have 70 days. Donald Trump is gaining momentum, and we see when he gains momentum, he can pick up 10 and 12 points. And I think that we could see that happen again, because the other thing that I'm seeing is the level of enthusiasm for Hillary Clinton is low. There are people who are saying that I'm going to vote for her, but not enthusiastically. And when you have people that are not enthusiastic, they're totally changeable. And people don't trust either of the candidates that much. And that makes these numbers very fluid. People are changing their mind. You can see as many as 70% of people that have polled have changed their mind on who they're going to support over the last 6 months. Now, obviously, there's a lot fewer candidates now, but that's the kind of situation we're running in, where people are really fluid right now. Their emotions are different. People are questioning what they might have they might have thought. People who are Republicans are saying I might vote for Hillary. People who are Democrats are voting for Donald Trump. It's a very, very different and unusual situation.
It's amazing to me because there is so much daylight in thinking between these two candidates. It's hard for me to imagine somebody going, well, maybe her, maybe him. To me, it's like you either like one or you're not going to vote at all. But what do I know? Lee Carter, thank you so much. Appreciate your time as always.
Anytime. Great to
So
be
the
here.
polls have tightened up. So you'd think Donald Trump had a slightly better week than Hillary Clinton. Not everyone agrees with that. Tony Saig and Theron Johnson, our all-star political panel, though, up next. They're going to debate it. Don't go away. We have just over 2 months to go until Election Day, another week of campaign chaos with big policy speeches and new developments in the Clinton email scandal. Let's get right to it with my political panel. Republican strategist, Fox News contributor Tony Saig, and Democratic strategist Theron Johnson. Thanks to both of you for joining us. Tony, let me start with you. Donald Trump had a great week. He went down to Mexico, snapped up that invitation, a very clever move. Then he got in a Twitter fight afterwards with the president of Mexico. Net, how do you think he did with all that?
Look, I think Donald Trump has been acting very presidential, and Hillary Clinton's acting as if she's in the witness protection program. I mean, the reality is when you're running for president, you go out on the stump, you do things that show how you want to lead the country, what you stand for. He went down to Mexico, accepted the invitation of the Mexican president. Sure, there are differences. Those are pretty well documented. And then he came back to the United States and gave, I think, probably the most detailed speech on immigration reform that we've heard in decades. Hillary Clinton, for her part, has been missing, totally absent, no press conferences. Not talking about the new economic numbers, both on growth and jobs that are abysmal. And all she does when given the opportunity to speak publicly is criticize Donald Trump. So he's at least putting forward his agenda. Today in Detroit, doing something very important, bringing in African-American voters. And she's completely outside of that same type of process.
Okay, let's bring in Theron and get his reaction. Theron, you know, he has been out in the stump. She's been behind the scenes, but she's been fundraising and raking in a ton of cash. She raked in $142 million in August alone. So even though we aren't seeing her, she's seeing her constituents and going to fundraisers and getting money that she can use for ads. Is that a smarter strategy?
Yes, she's been doing that, and she's been very successful. I mean, she's going to need all of that money to basically show the contrast between her and Donald Trump as we get closer to November. But the other thing that I think is very interesting is that she, at a time where 66 days left to go, she's continuing to make sure that folks know about her message and what she wants to do to move forward. Now, I want to respond real quickly to something
Tony
said.
How's she doing that? Because we haven't really seen her in the past week or two. She's not doing any press conferences. She's not, I mean, she's been, you know, making phone calls into shows from places to kind of respond to the fact that she's not doing any press conferences. But it seems like whatever, I don't know that she's getting her message out. She's raising money, which is great, but not much on messaging.
Yeah, so at a time where, you know, tomorrow she's going to be in swing states like Ohio. She spent a lot of time in Florida, and I'll just focus on Florida for a second, which is a big battleground state. Sure. I mean, when she goes to Florida, she's down there talking about how she's going to make it more accessible for small business owners to basically be able to do business, particularly African-American women. When she was in Ohio and Pennsylvania recently, she talked about how she's going to have a plan to strengthen the middle class. But the other thing that I think that she's doing is that she is making sure that when it's time for her to be the loudest voice and to basically be able to talk about the future and how a Clinton presidency would look totally different if a Trump presidency, I think that she would be ready. But let's also look at the math. I mean, she's leading right now in pretty much every battleground state, maybe except North Carolina.
Let me ask Tony about that, because that's a good point, Tony. You know, the national polls have closed quite a bit, and we were just talking about that in the last segment, especially when you look at a four-way race. It's a statistical dead heat. Margin of error is 3 points, and they're only 2 points apart. But in the battleground states, he's got some work to do. Maybe he should be on the ground in Florida and other communities.
Well, look, we see now the national polls closing. He's basically erased her lead, cut it in half since about 3 weeks ago, where, look, admittedly, Hillary Clinton had a very strong post-convention bounce. National polls, just so you know, are always lead indicators. State polls tend to follow. But even let's look at the state polls. Let's put it on the table. Florida, Ohio, North Carolina are now all within the margin of error. He's cut her lead in half in a state like Pennsylvania. He's ahead in states like Iowa. He's now put a state like New Hampshire in place. So clearly, it's what he's doing is working, what she's doing is not. And that's the lesson the last 2 weeks. In the meantime,
Melissa, she's battling back against this constant email dump that we're getting. Another huge batch of emails coming out yesterday, putting her in a really bad light. Theron, is that taking away some of her lead there and causing a distraction?
Well, let me answer the polling question first, and I'll be more than happy to give my response on the emails. This whole notion that state polling doesn't matter, that's just naive. I mean, I don't know how many
That's not what I said. I said it's a lagging indicator.
No, but Tony,
I said it lags the national numbers.
Okay. No, but Tony, hold on. I didn't cut you off, Tony. You're talking to someone who actually led the president's campaign in 2012, who led 3 battleground states, Virginia, North Carolina, and Florida. To say that those states do not matter is just ludicrous to me.
I don't think that's what he said, but you know what? I'm going to hold you guys over. Hang on. I'm going to hold you guys over after the break, and we'll come back. We'll have more time. Hang on.
Thank you.
We'll have more time to address this when we come back. My all-star panel is back. Republican strategist, Fox News contributor Tony Saig and Democratic strategist Theron Johnson are both with us. I want to look ahead now to what the candidates should be doing going forward. Tony, one of the big things coming up, obviously, is the debate. What do you think Donald Trump should be doing to prepare, and what should his tone be?
Look, I actually happen to think Trump has proven that he's extraordinarily effective in these debates. I don't think he alters much about his style. It's good when he's on offense, but it's depending on what he plays offense with. So my recommendation would be he focuses on the message that we know works: jobs, the economy, terrorism, and prosecuting Hillary Clinton on what we've seen every day and learn every day is a complete act of corruption in her dealings with both the server that she withheld a lot of information on, and her conduct at the State Department as it relates to the Clinton Foundation, with the commingling of activities in both. So long as he focuses on them, it's really going to be Hillary Clinton who I believe will come across as mean-spirited, who's going to probably want to try to provoke Donald Trump to do something inappropriate, and I think he just plays it smart.
Theron, what do you think her response should be? I mean, if he comes at her about the emails in the server and all of that, does she take the bait and respond to it? Does she brush it off like she didn't hear it, like she kind of does with the media?
Well, let's not forget, Hillary Clinton has actually had more debates than Donald Trump. So I think from an experience
over her lifetime for sure, and she's pretty good at it.
She's
so
what
should she do? What should she do with the email question? I mean, if he comes at her with all of that, should she respond?
Yeah, so let me finish, guys. So the point is that in the debate, she's got to basically drill down on specific policy that she basically is proposing with the issues that she cares most about. She's got to challenge Donald Trump to not just kind of throw out plans out there and things that he want to do without any substance. Now, let's just get to the email, because I know that's the thing you guys have been waiting on. Listen, she's come out and she said that it was wrong. She apologized. She's basically said, listen, if I can do it all over again, I would do it differently.
Should she say that during the debate, Theron?
She's already said
every step of the way.
Hang on. Go ahead, Theron.
Tony,
should she say that and apologize for it, or should because it makes her look defensive, but I don't know if how you address it in a debate setting.
It's not going to make her look defensive. She's already said it. I know you guys know that. But what I think she's got to do is that she's got to say, listen, there were some mistakes made. There were some emails that were exchanged. But at the end of the day, I'm the best person to lead this country. Let's not forget this. Donald Trump is going to go down in history. It's not only being the most privileged person to run for president, but he's going to be the most divisive. I mean, today he went into an African-American church and said, listen, I want to bring people together. Don't cut me off, Tony, because I didn't cut you off.
Tony didn't say anything. I was trying to get another question in here. I think it's interesting that you think that he's the most privileged person. I mean, one of the things that we've certainly learned about the Clintons is that they live in a bubble. I mean, they $44 million over the past, whatever it was, 5 or 6 years in speeches. I mean, they fly privately. They've gotten $16 million from the government. I mean, we're talking about levels of privilege here on both sides that 99.99% of the population can't even relate to. So I don't know if that's a great point for her. Let me let Tony back in. Hang on. Let me let Tony back in. Tony, if she is training, as we've heard, with the author, the ghostwriter of his book and other people to try and get under his skin and throw him off, do you think that he should go out of his way to be impervious to that and just sort of hold on to very steady ground and not lose his temper? Or is that part of his charm?
It's a great question, Melissa, because there is so much about Donald Trump being unorthodox that has led to his success as a presidential candidate. And in a year where we don't want a career politician like Hillary Clinton, who's done debates for 30-some-odd years, who's played the political game for that long, there is going to be a part of authenticity on his part that I think works to his benefit. My point is he should focus his remarks, his debating performance, on key areas where he has strength, like the economy and terrorism, and certainly attacking her on her corrupt conduct with the Clinton Foundation and the State Department, versus just chasing every single shot she takes. She knows that number one, she wants to run for valedictorian. She wants to prove that she's smarter than he is. Fine. On certain policies, she's been there for 30 years. Let's acknowledge that she's a very bright person. But she's also a very corrupt person, and she really wants to try to get him to be unqualified in how he reacts to her.
We're out of time. I want to give Theron the final word. Go ahead. What's your advice?
Well, the final word is this. We will never know how much Donald Trump is worth because you know why? He won't release his tax returns. And all those stats that you just uttered off, Melissa, are because the Clintons, at least with their finances, have been very transparent. Until we get Donald Trump's tax returns, we'll never know.
We got to go. Thanks to both of you. We'll be right back. Continued outrage tonight over San Francisco 49ers quarterback Colin Kaepernick's national anthem controversy. Joining me from St. Louis, radio host and author of Big Black Lie, Kevin Jackson. He is also a Fox News contributor. Thanks so much for joining us. It really feels like Colin Kaepernick has sort of backed himself into a corner at this point. He took a knee at the last game. There's kind of no graceful way for him to end this. What advice would you give him?
I would tell him to end it by just apologizing. That would be the quickest thing to do. The problem is he has found out that the way a lot of Americans have, that there's a lot of money and prestige that comes with what I call race pimping, which is actually the title of my latest book. And unfortunately for Kaepernick, you're right, he has backed himself in a corner because as opposed to focusing on his athleticism and the meritocracy that is the NFL and all professional sports, he's decided that in protest of his own inabilities on the football field, he'll now pivot to something else.
Well, you say that he gets money and prestige from this, but from my point of view, it seems like it's maybe costing him money. I mean, I don't know what money he's going to get as a result of doing it. He's making himself a more controversial figure. He's also pledged to give $1 million to what he calls racial equality causes in the future, but we don't know what any of those are.
Yeah, well, the problem is, Melissa, you don't understand how race pimping works. It's a futures business. So right now, he's on the outs in the NFL. He's been to the pinnacle. He didn't win the Super Bowl. He was cut during the training camp, and I don't know where he's at right now, but his career is on the decline. He hasn't been able to do anything. And so his contract in 2014 was for $126 million. He sat out most of the following year, and this year he's probably not going to start. So what does he do? He decides to become a petulant child and decide, hey, when I do get out, if I play the Beyonce card and do my X routine, then I'll hit the speaking circuit. I'll be the darling of the NFL. Now, I don't know how it's going to play out for him when his career is over, but don't think for 1 second there's not a ton of money in race pimping. There is. There's trillions of dollars in it.
Well, now some of the police in San Francisco are talking about boycotting the stadium and boycotting the games. Especially in reaction to those socks that he was wearing. And, they've made their rounds on social media showing police as pigs.
As pigs.
Yeah. What do you make of that? Would the police have the right to boycott the stadium now?
Look, I hope all of San Francisco boycotts it. We have a sport where the overwhelming majority of the fans are white, and they're watching a disproportionate number of people who are like Colin Kaepernick. They are young black men making millions and millions of dollars. So you have disproportionality on both sides. White people showing up in droves to watch a lot of black multimillionaires. This is what they get. They have to watch people put a Black Lives Matter thing on their arms and then protest the American flag.
Well, maybe the way that you just described it, it is the perfect forum for him to raise this issue. I mean, if it is a mostly white audience out there in the stadium watching him and out there in the viewing world, perhaps he's bringing up the issue of race inequality to people who otherwise wouldn't be thinking about it. I mean, what about that?
Well, I disagree. I think that, whites in America are far too long being made to apologize for things they have nothing to do with. With respect to the audience watching him, here again, we've got whites that are making these young black men into multimillionaires. You have black men that are achieving things all over this country in all walks of life. And quite frankly, the Black Lives Matter movement is a lie. So what white audience are being treated to is yet again more of the idea that white people are oppressing. They're oppressing him so much. He's a multimillionaire. He was adopted by a white family. He's come nowhere near any of the things that we're talking about with respect to these police officers. Neither of any of his friends.
That's a reason for him to stand up, because he has had such a privileged life. And the way you describe it, I mean, when you're talking about black athletes out there entertaining a white audience, that in and of itself sounds a little degrading.
Well, then degrade me, because I would love to have that opportunity. Okay. Look, at the end of the day, we should. Everybody in that audience is probably 1 to 2 degrees of separation from a law enforcement officer, and
we gotta go.
All the time. Okay.
I'm so sorry, Kevin. It's a great point. We're out of time. We'll do more next time. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And thanks to all of you out there for watching. Judge Jeanine will be back next week. Have a fantastic holiday weekend.